It's Chanukah, and I've got a song I want to teach you. So it's down the rabbit hole we go. Welcome to Jewish Music Toronto. I'm Eli. Remember that all of our lesson and sing-along videos are closed captioned. So if you want to follow along, all you have to do is click the CC button at the bottom of the YouTube player. In case you were wondering, I wasn't kidding about that rabbit hole comment. This week's song is Yevanim, or the Greeks. And in researching the song, this seemingly simple song, I spent hours poring over page after page, version after version, until finding the melody and a tiny bit of extra information in a songbook I'd borrowed from a neighbor. Thank you, Sai! So, let's get into it and bring up the board. What? What's that? We can't use the board anymore. No more annotations on YouTube. Huh. Alright, well, at the moment it seems there's nothing I can do about that, so from now on, until some other solution comes along, these lessons are just gonna run straight through, like this. Let's get into it! Here comes the background. Yivanim is not an original song unto itself. Then again, loads of other Jewish songs aren't either. Rather, it's one of the verses of the well-known Chanukah song, Ma'oz Tzur. As noted in our original video on Ma'oz Tzur, each verse of the full song tells a different story of salvation from throughout Jewish history. You've got the Egyptians, the Persians, the Romans, the Babylonians, and of course, the Greeks. Also, given the last verse's focus on being delivered from a wicked nation and the treatment the Jews were getting at the time the song was thought to be written, see the Crusades, the last verse is probably about Christianity as a whole. I've included a link to the Wikipedia entry on Ma'oz Tzur if you're interested in reading a little bit more about that. But this verse specifically focuses on the Greeks. Heck, it's the first word in the verse, and likely because of that as well, the name of this spin-off song. Outside of the first verse of Ma'oz Tzur, it's also the only other verse to actually be about Chanukah itself. That may well also explain why it became a spin-off song. As you'll see when we get to the lyrics, it does a great job of condensing the elements of the story into a single verse. You've got Greek rule, the defiling of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, the miracle of the oil, and the declaration of the holiday. The only thing that isn't in there is the conflict within the Jewish world that was raging during those years. Though you wouldn't exactly expect a song celebrating victory over assimilation, both pushed from without and within, to include that darker chapter. It's not unlike some of the Jewish people who fell into Persian ways in the Purim story. I've got a couple of links below if you want to do a little more reading on that. So, let's move on to the author. We covered this in short in the original Ma'oz Tzur lesson video, but let me just provide a quick refresher with a tad more added information. This is the same information you could pull up on Wikipedia or any other article about the song, but you are already here. Ma'oz Tzur is believed to have been written by a Mordechai, mainly because the name appears in the acrostics within the lyrics. Which Mordechai it was, though, is between the author of the Shabbat song Mayafit, Mordechai ben Yitzchak Halevi, the scholar Mordechai mentioned in the Tosafot in Masechet Nida of Talmud Bavli, the additional commentary in the Tractate of Menstrual Cycles in the Babylonian Talmud. Yep, that's a thing, if you didn't know. And another Mordechai who, frankly, I'm not sure should have been considered, given the expected timing of the song's authorship. Again, links are down in the description if you want to learn more. On to the composer! Here's where I fell down the rabbit hole. There are so many versions of this one spin-off song's melody that I wound up jumping from song to song, version to version, just to get as close as I have to the little information that I have now. And even still, I'm left with "It's a traditional folk tune." If you're familiar with why I started this channel, you'll know that's not particularly satisfying for me, as I'm sure it's not for you either. That's not to say the search wasn't informative. What I found explained why I had so much trouble getting to this conclusion. I started with Sai's book, a copy of Edward Callender and Velvel Pasternak's The Ultimate Jewish Piano Book, paired with my usual sources. Zemereshet? No luck. HebrewSongs.com? Sure, it has the words, but the only link it has to sheet music is behind a login page exclusively for music retailers. The Milken Archive of Jewish Music. Not even close. So I dug in further into a couple of university databases which have kindly granted me access for just such research. First, Florida Atlantic University's Recorded Sound Archive. I started finding tracks titled Yevanim here and there, but every track I heard, it was always the wrong melody. Surely there must be some older recording somewhere. And then, there it was, sitting on the server at the Dartmouth Jewish Sound Archive, on an album from the early 60s, Yevanim. This track on Chanukah, Sing with Seymour, featuring Seymour Silbermans and the Boys, followed the book's sheet music precisely. That cleared up some major confusion I had regarding this particular melody because I had heard something so similar to it time and time again, but something was off every time I looked at the sheet music. Every version I've heard of it was altered from the original. One specific example is on Shalhevet Orchestra's Haneshama Lach Volume 9, which itself features 4 versions of Yevanim. I knew the melody of Yevanim 4, as it's listed on the CD, sounded almost identical to what I was reading on the sheet music, but other versions also had similarities to it, so maybe it too was a different version? But finally, on hearing the 1963 version, I got my answer. The Shalhevet version, the approximate melody I'd grown up knowing, is just a spiced up take on the original. No, I didn't learn who the original composer was in the end. It's still just a traditional Hasidic folk tune melody, but getting as far as I did was eye-opening nonetheless. We'll be doing the original melody today, so once you're finished up here and have it in your head, why not follow the links to the other versions below and see if you can spot the variations. Let's get into the lyrics. The lyrics go, Yevanim nikbetzu alai, azai bimei chashmanim. The Greeks gathered to attack me in the days of the Chashmanaim, the Hasmoneans. Ufalzu chomot migdalai, vitimu kol hashmanim. They demolished my towers and defiled all the oils. A lot of translations use the word polluted instead of defiled, but given that the word is tameh, which means impure, and that the act itself was making the oil and everything in the temple impure, it just makes more sense to me. Umi notar kankanim na'asa nes lashoshanim. And from the last of the pitchers of oil came a miracle for the Shoshanim, a name for the Jews typically used in celebration, like in the song Shoshanat Yaakov. V'nei vina yimei shmona kavu shir urinanim. Men of wisdom designated 8 days of song and praise. And boom, you've got Chanukah. Finally, it's time for the melody. The melody goes, Yevanim Yevanim nikbetzu alai, azai bimei chashmanim, ufalzu chomot migdalai, vitimu kol hashmanim, uminotar kankanim, nasa nes lashoshanim, b'nei vina yemei shmona, kavu shir urinanim, v'nei vina yemei shmona, kavu shir urinanim. That's it for this week's lesson. Check back soon for our sing-along to Yevanim. If you're enjoying our videos, be sure to subscribe and share. We really appreciate the support. Feel free to leave any comments or questions below. I always try to get back to them. Also, if you're looking to purchase some Chanukah music, I've included a couple of links below. One is to a recently released album of Chanukah classics. The other is to Mostly Music's complete Chanukah section. Enjoy! You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/JewishMusicToronto and on Tumblr at jewishmusicdatabase.tumblr.com. I'm also occasionally on Twitter under @JewishMusicTO. Thanks for watching and bye for now!